In October 1914, we sent away 8,500 soldiers and about 4,000 horses. Now that's the size of a reasonable sized town in 1914, and still, even today, it's the largest single dispatch of people from New Zealand in one go. Ships were turned around, refitted, their passenger accommodation was taken out in a matter of weeks, and they were assembled at Auckland and Wellington. Now, what was it like? Well, for the guys, they talked about it being a great adventure, because most of them had had no opportunity in civilian life to go to Europe. And they didn't have the leave to do that, and they didn't have the money. So here was the kindly old Bill Massey, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, paying to send them overseas. What sort of voyage did they have? Well, it depended. It was luck of the draw. If you got a nice, big, modern passenger ship like the Athenic or the Maunganui, then yes, it was probably much more comfortable than being on an old, slow cargo carrier, which would have very limited facilities and probably more than enough cockroaches and rats. But I don't want to push it too far. This was not a modern luxury cruise. On the Athenic, the big ship, there were 500 people below the rank of officer, and they were sharing 5 wash basins and 4 toilets. Ships are always hierarchical places. In peacetime, you've got first, second, and third class passengers, and then you've got a hierarchy within the crew. The only thing changed was they're all wearing khaki. These ships didn't have stabilisers. Some of them would roll on wet grass, as the sailors would say. So you can imagine all these men crammed in at very close quarters, the majority of them feeling quite sick in the Tasman. Not everyone, but enormous numbers of letters and diaries talk about men being out for the count for the course of several days on the Tasman. They went into Hobart. The lucky ones by then had gained their sea legs, but more than enough hadn't. And then they had the Great South Australian Bight to go through, and that's still one of the roughest spots of water on Earth. And you read horrible stories about men unable to leave their bunks, unable to hold down a meal for days on end. Well, the lucky few, of course, are out there on the deck strolling around watching whales. So it was your constitution and the nature of the ship that you're travelling on. Those two would come together. Convoys move at the speed of the slowest ship. So if you're on the Athenic capable of 16 or 17 knots, you were slowed down by an Australian collier that could do only 10. And that lengthened the journey. And that was particularly important when they got into the really hot zone, because they left New Zealand in spring, and they were heading up to the Northern Hemisphere. The Indian Ocean was always a hot place. You're talking about steel ships, you're talking about coal being burnt in boilers. So for the crew, that was a very stressful time. The ships would lose a bit of speed. And the men would be sleeping out on decks when it wasn't raining. You talk about exhaustion, people are getting sick, and the horses are starting to die. Some of them down the holes, many are up on the decks in horse boxes. But there are quite considerable casualties, and every now and then the convoy will stop for a burial at sea.